Hi everyone, this is Jillian from Jewish Workshops and Aish Webinars. It is a pleasure to be joining all of you today, and we are extremely privileged to have Chana Radcliffe on the line. Before we get started, I'd love to see who's joining us and where you're from. So if you can just go to your chat box, or it may be called the question box on the right-hand side of your screen, and put your first name or your initials if you prefer, and where you're joining us from, I'd love to be able to welcome you. Welcome, Zahava from Brooklyn and Jonathan from Toronto. Welcome, MD from Toronto and Marietta. Welcome, Miriam from Toronto, Sima from Connecticut, Allison from New Jersey. Welcome, Etty from Israel and Adina from Brooklyn. Welcome, Arthur and Henry from Baltimore. And R from Brooklyn, Joanna from San Diego, Zelda from Long Island. Welcome Rachi from Israel and Melanie from Toronto, Chana from Brooklyn, Devora from Boca Raton, Rebecca from Toronto. Welcome Sender from Cleveland and Mandy from Toronto. We've got a great Toronto crowd here. It's good to see. BH from Brooklyn, Ren from Germany. Welcome Suri from Borough Park and Nicole from Calgary. Welcome, Debbie. Welcome, Elisheva from the Poconos and Rebecca from Woodmere. Rachel from Toronto, welcome. Razy from Brooklyn, Arie from Miami, AW from Long Island, Yael from Ottawa, welcome, welcome. Devora from Muncie and Kayla from Muncie and Jenny from Calgary, welcome. Sarah Ruth from Luxembourg, Stephanie from Netanya, Honey from Brooklyn, Rena from Passaic. Oh my goodness, the list is going on and on. It's so wonderful to see how many people have joined in today. Let me get to a few more people. I'd love to be able to welcome everyone. LD from New York City, welcome Frima from Johannesburg and Judy from Cincinnati. Rivka from London, welcome Stella from Queens and CK from Toronto, MD from New York, Malka from Cleveland, Charna from Memphis, welcome, Leanne from Johannesburg and Sturny from Michigan, welcome Devora from Lakewood, Ora Bracha from Los Angeles, Ellen from Atlanta, Natalia from Colombia, welcome Bridget from Georgia, EC from Israel, amazing. Alex from Ontario, welcome. Chandra from Thornhill, Tirza from Chicago, Corinne from Arkansas, Julie from New York City. Wow, this is absolutely wonderful. As people continue to flood in from all over the world, with over 2,500 people signed up for today's webinar, we are going to hit capacity any minute. So please stay on the line and don't leave in the middle. You'd very likely be locked out, and I don't want you to miss a thing. I want to go ahead and just welcome everyone. A big, huge shout out to everyone from all over the world. Since last winter, when we invited Chana to bring her expertise in parenting and relationships to our Jewish Workshops community, we've received countless emails and phone calls from members expressing their heartfelt appreciation and enthusiasm for Chana's guidance and knowledge. And with that gratitude came request after request to learn more from Chana and delve deeper into some difficult issues that plague our lives and our children's in ways we never knew. So today, Chana is going to introduce her unique insights and perspective on handling anxious moments of our own and helping our children develop the skills to handle anxiety, fear, and stress. Make sure to stay on the line until the very end to hear about this one-time chance to join Chana week after week for a full live online program at a special discounted rate for all attendees. Plus, we've had hundreds of questions come in ahead of time, and we'll get to as many live on the line as possible at the end. So please feel free to also share your questions in the question box, and we will do our best to answer as many as we can. It is truly an honor to be hosting Chana Radcliffe today. A registered member of the College of Psychologists of Ontario, Chana has been practicing marriage, parenting, and individual counseling for over 40 years. Chana is a well-sought-after lecturer on stress management, parenting, anger management, and emotional well-being. She is the author of Raise Your Kids Without Raising Your Voice, The Fear Fix, Make Yourself at Home, and 5 other books on family life and emotional well-being. Chana, we are so grateful that you are joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and turn the microphone over to you. Welcome. How are you?
I'm terrific. I'm really looking forward to today's workshop.
Great, me too.
Mhm.
Let's go ahead and get started.
Okay. All right. So we're looking at my notes, which are not up. So hold on for a second. Let's see. Okay. All right. Because there's a lot to say, and I did jot it down. So I'm talking today about the unsettled feelings that we human beings have. And I want to start with the question, do children suffer as much as we do? Like, childhood seems to be this wonderful time of innocent happiness, fun, I don't know what. I mean, we see that they misbehave and stuff, but, from their point of view, it's hard to know whether they suffer, although some of them make it very clear to us. But I guess the question I'm asking is, do all children suffer? And I think the answer to that is yes. Okay, all children are suffering. And how do I know that to be true? I'll say it's because it's the way we are all made. We have negative feelings. In fact, of the 5 categories of emotions that we have, the happy ones, the sad ones, the scared ones, the mad ones, and the confused ones, 4 out of these 5 are negative feelings. Okay, and they cause us pain and aggravation. Some a little bit more than others, but all of them are in the negative category. So if your child is human and normal, he or she has a lot of these feelings a lot of the time. Only 1 out of the 5 is happy, the happy category where we're calm, excited, relaxed, optimistic, those things. Yes, we're like that some of the time, but it's not the human way to be like that all of the time. And in fact, we need these other feelings to help move us through life and guide us along. So even if everything were to go your child's way, even if your child had everything that he wanted, and everything is perfect in his or her life, he would still suffer if he's a human being, which is, we're going to kind of look at how that is true and why that is true. Although, another kind of concept to keep in mind is that even when we have everything, we will always want more. And that's a form of suffering. It says, our sages say, if a person has 100, he wants 1,000. There's no end to our our ability to have unfulfilled needs and feelings. So again, it's the human way to be in pain. And as parents, we want to be able to help our children, but in order to help our children, we do have to know a little bit about how to help ourselves, which is why this topic is all put together in helping the parent and the child all at once. How can we help our children if we don't really understand what's going on inside our own psyche, our own heart, our own mind? And if we can't soothe ourselves, how can we be expected to soothe anybody else? It's kind of unrealistic. So again, if a child lived in a perfect home, witnessing a perfect marriage and had perfect siblings, which I don't know who has any of that set up, but okay, let's say the child did, and they had everything their hearts could desire, and they were top students, and everything at school was successful, everything was looking good, okay, still that child would have fear, insecurity, pain, shame, all of the normal human emotions. And they're not necessarily going to tell their parent about it. Okay, and this is the big thing for us to look at today. How can we even tell when our child is suffering if our child isn't communicating? Um, well, before we look right at the child, I want us to look at ourselves for a moment and see, how do we show our suffering? We're going to kind of assess our understanding of our children's inner world by looking at our own behavior for a moment and looking at your physical experiences, like how it is for you when you suffer, when things are not okay inside of you, when you're unsettled, when you're anxious, when you're disturbed, when you're somehow off balance. How do you know that? How would somebody else know that if they were looking at you? So I would like you just to take a moment and contribute here, put it in the chat box for us. If somebody was looking at you or you're looking at yourself, how would you know that everything is not perfectly okay? what are some of the signs and symptoms that you would be showing? Or you might think, how do you know that everything is not okay with your adult partner, your spouse? How do you know that everything is not peaceful inside? What are you seeing? So can you take a moment and just put that in the chat box and we'll discuss that together?
Sure, people are already starting to write in. So it looks like a short fuse, a short temper,
Mm-hmm.
yelling, irritability, facial expressions. I become withdrawn, aggressive behavior, withdrawal. I look sad, screaming, definitely facial expression. I shut off.
Mm-hmm.
My body language, irritable or angry, edginess, quiet, a heaviness, a crossed arms, a frown, and haste answers. I
Mm-hmm.
show tension in my facial expressions. I have outbursts. Um, I'm not as patient. I get headaches and stomach aches. I become grumpy.
Yes,
Uh,
all of this. Yeah, that's great.
mhm. I
That's a
become
really
more
good list.
introverted. I cry
Mhm.
more. Um, not looking somebody in the eye. Unfocused. A lot of people are withdrawn or short answers.
Yes, yes, definitely. That's a really good list. You guys are either tuning into yourself or tuning into your partner very nicely. Um, yeah, so I wrote down some of those things myself too. We're not. Sometimes, it's kind of questions we might have. Like I'm reading a book, watching a movie or something, and I start crying, and um, I'm not even sure why. But if I do, it kind of if I'm tearful and don't know why, it's kind of like something's cooking inside. What is going on? Uh, other things like some of you mentioned, there might be physical pain, headaches, stomach aches. You feel off. We can have a lot of physical pain from the stress that we feel, the emotions that are unsettled work their way into our bodies one way or another, and we're going to be talking more about that. But yeah, if we're hurting physically, very often it's either causing or it's the cause and result of emotional distress as well. Sometimes our behaviors, our addictions and our compulsions, shall we say, our overeating, our oversleeping, our over um, distracting ourselves with all sorts of things. This indicates that all is not well because the anxiety that is behind all of this forces us to try and calm our system down one way or the other. And so we'll be doing things. And we're going to explore this list just a little bit more so that we can understand our children. But we're always pushed towards trying to become balanced again. If we're unbalanced emotionally, inside of us, there's like a little program that runs that says, oh, the ship is tilting. You've got to straighten it out. And I've used the word anxiety here um, in a specific way. And I'm going to ask you again to write in the chat box because I want to know when you hear that word, anxiety or anxious feeling, what do you think it means? Could you give us a definition, please, of what is anxiety? Because I'm going to say that behind all of the things that we're talking about here is an anxious feeling. What does that mean to you? Okay, so again, take a moment and let me know what you think.
Again, we have some great answers. Fear, worry, nervousness, intolerance of uncertainty, fear, uptightness, out of balance, internal unrest, tenseness,
Mm-hmm.
need and emotional fixing,
Mm-hmm.
fear of the unknown,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
undue worry.
Right. So I think we're capturing here some of the ways that we think of this word. Often anxious means fearful, worried. We use it. It's a problematic word in a certain way because we tend, clinically, for sure, it means that we're afraid of something, or we're panicking about something, or we're worrying about something. And again, we'll discuss more about that later. But the definitions that you gave just now that you were participating with are closer to what I mean by anxious as far as our seminar goes, our webinar goes, and as far as our children go. And that is the unsettled disturbance that is behind all of our ways of seeking balance. Okay, so there's something off. Fear may not always be the exact word. There's something unsettled, something uncertain, something insecure, something disturbed. Okay, so like, and that's what I'm going to mean by anxiety, both in this webinar and in the follow-up course. I'm taking all of these feelings that all of us have, adults, teens, children, even babies, and look at that, because that disturbance and unsettledness drives so much of our everyday behavior, thoughts, and feelings. All right, so this is a really important thing to understand, this disturbance. We're always seeking to straighten it out, to make balance. So, okay. As far as anxiety by itself, in the clinical sense, so it's going to more often refer to the fearful emotions. And it becomes anxiety disorder when those fearful emotions are interrupting the functioning of our lives or our children's lives. So if we're feeling that kind of anxiety, then maybe we can't go to work every day. It's too much for us. So we're not keeping up with our household tasks. It's just too overwhelming. Or if we're a child or teen, we're not able to focus on our studies. There's too much anxiety. We can't, maybe it's a particular subject that overwhelms us, or it's school in general, or it's life. When we're completely overwhelmed to the point where we can't get up and go anymore. So clinicians call this an anxiety disorder. Now, we all have anxiety, but we're not all suffering from a diagnosable disorder, although a huge number of people will be diagnosed with that if they start describing what's going on with themselves. But as long as you're functioning, it's unlikely that anybody will ever say you actually have a disorder. That doesn't mean you're thriving. It doesn't mean that your child is thriving. Just because your child can go to school, is writing tests, even is getting A+, and it's looking like they're really being successful, has a lot of friends, is whatever, that does not mean that there's no suffering. In fact, this is one of the most fascinating things. When we look around and we see people all smiling, in the street, or as, at a wedding or wherever they are, they all look like they're doing so well, but human beings don't do well, okay? Nobody does that well, because we have this disturbance, which is part of our human nature, and we're always trying to fix that. So that disturbance only reaches disorder level when it's completely overwhelming our ability to cope. And that's not what I'm talking about in this workshop, although everything I say would be applicable to anybody who also had a disorder. But it's also applicable to all the rest of us and all of our kids. Now, another sign of disorder is that when a person has so much distress that they can't bear it anymore, and they're desperately seeking relief. So that can happen even though the person's still functioning. So it's one of those two things that throws it into a disorder. One, you're not functioning, or two, you just are suffering so much. Now, again, I'm going to draw this kind of line because we're all suffering and our children are suffering. The question is, what is so much? Like, what has to happen before, like, we move into that disordered place? And this is going to be really hard for us to tell, because these feelings are on a slope, or like a sliding scale or something. We all have these feelings, but at different levels. So let's say there's a teenager who discovers that, um, alcohol or something else makes him or her feel calmer, more relaxed, happier. Or even an adult. Let's say this is happening to you or your spouse, that a little drink, a little wine with dinner or something calms your nerves. And so you, or the teenager, whatever, has more and more of this to get calmer and calmer nerves. Does that mean you have a disorder? So the whole, diagnostic system, kind of, because, well, how many drinks, and is the drinking interfering with your life now? Because you could have a drinking disorder, they might call it, under which is probably some kind of other disorder. But let's say there could be an anxiety disorder that caused you to drink to begin with because you were what we call self-medicating. Okay, we might still think of all of that as extreme. If the person was having not just a drink with dinner and not just an occasional drink, but was getting plastered, and your child is whatever, vomiting and taxi cabs or whatever it is, there's that level. But what if it isn't substance abuse that you're looking at? And what if it's just more like, again, it's not so uh, in your face, kind of what the child's coping mechanism is, or what your coping mechanism is. Maybe you read novels all day long because it's just, you've got this anxiety that stops you from getting off the couch, and nobody's going to, except your spouse maybe, accuse you of not being healthy. They might say you're lazy, but they don't even know, why aren't you doing something more with your life? If you're a bright adolescent, a bright, millennial in your 20s or 30s or whatever, a bright adult, why aren't you doing more? What's stopping you? What's holding you back? And so many people will say, like, yeah, I wish I could do this or that, but the idea of going to school makes me, and we become avoidant. And there, it's hard to see, unless you're extremely avoidant, that in fact you are suffering from a lot of anxious feelings, or your child is suffering, again, from these things, because um, avoidance is one of the behaviors that we'll do when we're feeling anxious. Like, I'm just not going to go there. And that way I won't have to deal with these uncomfortable feelings. More on this in a minute. Let's go back to the physical symptoms that some of you did listed before, okay? We said irritability, okay? We can tell if somebody's like snapping or very irritable if we are that way. Sometimes we're that way because we're nervous, or we'll use the word nervous, like my nerves are fried, or my nerves are on edge, or I feel so nervous, like, don't bother me right now, I'm so nervous, we might say to our loved ones. And that nervousness is itself a form of the anxious type of feeling that I'm talking about. We might feel rapid heartbeat. That's a different kind of, that's more like closer to fear for a lot of us. But some of us can feel that rapid heartbeat without feeling fear. We don't even know why our heart is going wonking on us. So it's just like, we're feeling dizzy, we're feeling spacey, we're maybe driving along in a car and feeling a little dizzy. So, okay, hopefully we pull over, but we may be sitting in a chair or standing up, walking down the street, and all of a sudden we feel dizzy. And maybe it happens again and again, and we go to the doctor, and doctor checks it out and says, everything's fine. A lot of times, our physical symptoms will take us to get a medical checkup. And so many times it'll come back with, oh, you're perfectly healthy, everything's fine, but meanwhile, the tingling in our fingertips and the weird feelings, our stiff neck, our tight jaw, the migraine headaches or the tension headaches that we talked about, the stomach aches, the back aches, various pains in our muscles and all over. And the doctor's telling us we're really healthy. But eventually, if we keep going to the doctor's going to tell us, why don't you go get some counseling? Maybe it's stress, okay? Now, what is stress? All right, I'm going to ask you that question too, okay? What's the difference between feeling anxious and feeling stressed? Okay, can you just tell me your thoughts on that? What would you say the difference is? It's a harder question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stress, stress is a challenge. Stress is more of a fight or flight response. It's a result of anxiousness, the inability to cope. Stress is having a lot on your plate.
Mm-hmm.
Anxiety is being unable to deal with the challenge.
Mm.
Anxious is more helplessness. Stressed is feeling overwhelmed. Stress is more pressure.
Mm.
Stress is longer term. Anxious is in the present.
Mm.
And
These are
actually
these are
someone,
good.
yeah, someone else thinks that stress is more temporary and anxiety is what really lasts longer.
Mm-hmm.
It's when our demands exceed our capacity.
Mm-hmm.
That's really good. Stress
Mm-hmm.
feels manageable. Anxious is fear. Stress is feeling choked.
So I'm going to say you can see, there's some similarity, but some differences in the way we think of it. Uh, the way I'm thinking of it as far as this course, because we might say, well, stress causes headaches, all right? And now I'm saying, well, this anxious feeling underneath can also cause headaches. And when I'm or backaches and all this stuff, we say stress causes physical illness. That's true, and our doctors eventually send us for counseling because if we're having a lot of physical problems that there's no finding for like a physical cause, an illness that's causing it, then they'll say it's stress, whatever that is. Um, but anxious, in the sense that I'm using it, is more that momentary feeling that causes us to need to take care of it right now. We may be chronically stressed, like we're dealing with money problems, marriage problems, parenting problems, life problems, because that's what it's all about. So we're dealing with all of that. We have this stress, but in the moment, I need my chocolate or I need my whatever it is I do for some of the things we do when we're feeling anxious are um, they help us succeed in life. Like, for example, I'm going to throw myself into my work and just like block out everything because I have this anxious feeling. Or now I'm going to madly exercise for 3 hours because I've got to get rid of that feeling. So in the sense that I'm using it as a more intense form of disturbance that is begging us to do something about it. Okay, so we with stress, it's kind of the background noise of our life. Like if you're alive, you must have stress, whether it's a math test or a driving test or a relationship test, whatever it is we're doing, there's got to be stress because that is the nature of life, okay? Interestingly, anxiety itself is not the nature of life, okay? It's a feeling that's a signal to us to do something to restore our tranquility and our serenity. It's an uncomfortable, painful sensation that, if unattended, goes into the body and becomes expressed that way. But it can often go into escapism, like I said, reading novels or watching things all day or dealing with other people's problems instead of our own problems, our cravings, our addictions and compulsions. I'm going to clean the house, clean the house, clean the house. If I just have the house clean and in order, then I'll have this feeling inside of me in order too. All of that stuff. And it can go into things that are more of a mental health nature. For example, under the behaviors of like I said, the addictive things like gambling or shoplifting or hoarding, which are now, again, more disordered behaviors, a category of things that we can't stop. But there's other things that are much more benign that we have trouble stopping, like worrying. Now, interestingly, worrying can be a response to the anxious feeling that I'm talking about. Okay, so under the worrying, the constant generating of negative pictures, ruminating on something that was uncomfortable that happened already, or ruminating on something that we're worried about for the future that might happen, but going around in that circle, around and around, and I can't stop our brain, can't quiet it down. That is actually a coping mechanism for the anxious feeling. Okay, that's an adaptation to. It's almost like if you do anything rhythmic, if you do anything over and over, like knitting, the back and forth of the needles, or any drumming, any rhythmic kind of thing, calms that anxious feeling. And interestingly, even worrying and ruminating calms the feeling that's under it. We'll be taking a much closer look at all of these things in the follow-up course. Okay, so I'm raising them, I'm pointing our attention to them just so we understand um, kind of the general landscape of what we're talking about. Okay, so avoidance. Now we're looking at now some other things that we might do to deal with the feelings. I said avoidance, like we might, if we're feeling anxious, not do the things that provoke intense feelings of anxiety. So let's say we have a fear, which is now an intense feeling. We can really feel it. It's not in the background. We feel afraid, right? So afraid of flying, afraid of dogs, afraid of bees, whatever it is. We're running around like crazy. We're not going on the plane. We're avoiding. Afraid of people, avoid the party, avoid the social scene, avoid the task. Any kind of avoidance is a way to soothe that anxious feeling. Becoming ritualistic. The OCD kind of patterns of coping. Again, the OCD is a special category of things that has its own brain patterns and biological basis, but underneath the obsessions and compulsions um, are this anxious feeling underneath both of them. Okay, that's so um, there's a we'll talk about it more. Okay, I'll just say that even when we don't have OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, where we're doing the kind of hand washing or checking rituals, we may have much more minor forms of that, like just constantly checking something, becoming perfectionistic. It's not a disorder level, but we're paying attention to minutiae and to details. Um, as a way of coping with that anxious feeling, worrying about our kids, having parenting anxiety and going around and around like over helicopter parenting and all that stuff. It's not, it's interesting. I just want you to think of it this way. Doing all these things is a response to the anxious feeling. It is not in itself the anxious feeling. So we're not allowing our kids to take risks, or we're not letting go of control. We're over supervising. All that stuff is because of the feeling inside. Now, we have a lot of weird other feelings. Like, for example, some of us have phobias that don't show up. It's not a flying phobia, so nobody knows about it necessarily, but we may have a phobia um, of vomiting, let's say. Okay, so we don't vomit very much when we're adults, hopefully. When kids get flus and stuff, they tend to, I don't know, be quicker to vomit. But if we have a phobia like that, most of our friends won't know about it. Okay, so maybe it depends if we're a talker or not a talker, but let's just say this. We don't tell our friends necessarily that we can't stop our thoughts, or that we're thinking all the time about how we're coming across, how we're looking, how people are judging us, whether that we feel inadequate all the time, or rejected half the time, or judged, or that we have trouble making decisions. Like, these kinds of things all stem from that anxious feeling also. Um, and we may live with this day in, day out, this kind of torture, and very few people know about it. Maybe our spouse, maybe not. It's not like we're sharing all of our vulnerabilities. We may have severe fear of death, dying, sick people, germs, who knows. We're not necessarily sharing that. Even though we know we are suffering from it. Let's take a moment here, because I want you to really understand your kids. Why might you not share some of these kinds of, we'll call them private anxieties? What is the reason you won't share that with too many people? Maybe a trusted confidant, maybe nobody. Like, try and think, if there's something that you have going on that you've told nobody, and try and think, why haven't you? Could you just write that in your box and let me know?
Embarrassment, shame, a fear of people looking down on me. People think I'm strange, fear of being judged, misunderstood, embarrassment. I'm insecure about it. Fear of being labeled
Mm-hmm.
makes me feel vulnerable. It would be a hit to my ego. I don't want to burden them.
Mm-hmm.
They might think I'm a bad parent. No one will understand.
Yes.
They can't fix it anyway.
Mm.
Oh,
Now,
it looks like a
yeah,
weakness.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
These are the reasons. And notice that if we don't share it, and we keep it all to ourselves, let's just add here, how does that leave you feeling? The fact that you really can't talk about some of these anxious types of feelings. You can't share it. So how does that leave you feeling?
Alone, stuck,
Mm-hmm.
isolated, helpless,
Yes. Yes.
like I'm the only one that goes through
Yes.
this.
Yes.
I'm abnormal. I'm
Mm,
broken. Nobody
mm.
gets it. I'm afraid. Trapped. Sad.
All of
Scared.
this. Yes, yes. That's exactly the normal consequence of not being able to tell somebody about these kinds of feelings. We feel odd, we feel misunderstood, or that we won't be fully understood or fully accepted. We feel very isolated and alone. And the burden of it is that much worse. We feel like a freak sometimes, like there's something terribly wrong with us, that we're broken, all of the things that you said. Um, you know, and I'm only skimming the surface. If I haven't named your particular quirk, it's not because your quirk is unusual. It's just that there's a long list of things that, I can't use public washrooms, or I don't, there's a million things. I can't even think of them off the top of my head, and I won't ask you to share them. um, but it's something like we can't even imagine how weird we can all be in a certain way in terms of our focus and on of our anxiety. Like it's and I don't mean that word weird in the weird way. I mean it in terms of things that we might not have thought about, like what is easy for you to do might be very, very difficult for somebody else to do. And it's true that sometimes we don't understand what's the big problem. Like, why are you, like some things like, let's say if you feel anxious about getting up in front of a crowd to speak, well, since that's the most common thing that people feel phobic about, actually, most people understand that. But if you say, you're anxious going up and down the escalator or elevator, so you're going to draw a lesser crowd, not a minute crowd for that, because a lot of people are afraid of getting stuck in elevators. And they, again, they're not going to tell you about it unless it comes up in conversation. But there are things like that, I don't know, that we could be afraid of anything. And some things we're afraid of, we have no logical explanation for why we are afraid of them. We were born that way. Other things, they came about later in life as a result of a traumatic experience. For example, it might be that some dog chased you when you were a kid, and that stuck in your brain, just got stuck there. And the rest of your life, you're 45 years old, still terrified of dogs. You haven't been able to unstick it. And we're just coping with all of those things. And it doesn't take all of our energy, and maybe we're avoiding places where we know there's dogs at this point, but we have these workarounds. So, okay, good for us. We figured it out. But when we're thinking of our children, maybe there's something we could do that would help them not have to carry that fear all the way through their lives. Because a bit of a handicap, even though it's not ruining our life, maybe if somebody would have intervened in a certain way after that dog chased us, maybe by 3 or 4 or 5 decades later, we wouldn't still have this hang up. And kind of that's why I want us to understand a little bit about ourselves, so that we can save our children from some level of suffering. Now, we can't save them from all of life's suffering, but as dedicated parents, if we can give them tools to, I don't know, minimize their suffering, then hopefully they'll be having more energy to fulfill their life's potential, right? Like the less stuck they are with their pain and angst, the more free they are to do good things with their life. And the same thing would be true with us. So all the things that we're going to learn about helping our children will also help us. So there'll be a double payoff there. Okay, let's look now a little closer at children. I'm just looking. Okay, there are things that we can see in our children. So we know they do have some anxious feeling, some disturbance there. And some of it is that they're just going to tell us right up front. Like there are some kids who are very vocal. Mommy, I'm so anxious. Mommy, I can't sleep at night. I'm always thinking of whatever that, Mommy, I can't make my brain stop. Okay, so some kids will tell you this. Those are examples of young kids. They could be 5, 6, 7, 8 years old telling you this. But if they don't come out um, and tell you, and by the way, depending on your response in the first decade, like between 0 and 10, well, they're not talking at 3 and 10, let's say, when they start telling you, depending on your response, they may continue to tell you when they're adolescents and older. If you successfully shut them down somehow, however, in that first decade, then the chances of them continuing to be open, even that original group that was open, they will be less open in the second decade and beyond. Now, I'm going to ask you before we start looking, just at this one point here, if a child does tell you that they're feeling, oh no, they're worrying about something. Let's say they're worrying about, I don't know, I'll make up a worry here. They're worrying that they feel, oh, I need one. I just need a simple worry. They're worrying about a test, okay? Let's say your child who is an excellent student tells you that she's worried about a test, okay? Just write in your chat box, what is the most common parental response to that kind of thing? The child says, oh, I've got this test tomorrow. I'm so worried about it. You know, and this is your A+ student. What is the normal thing to say?
Don't worry, you'll do fine. The grade doesn't matter. We know as long as you try. Uh,
Yes.
if you study, you'll be fine. You'll do great. Just do your best.
Yes.
You'll be great.
Yes. Okay. So, and that's what I'm calling a benevolent but shutting down kind of response. Okay. As we'll see as we go along, reassurance is actually the last thing you want to be doing to help your child deal with anxious feelings. Right? And it's the first thing that we want to do because that's our instinct to do. We're going to make that problem go away real quick. But it shuts down the anxious process. You didn't cure the anxiety at all. And again, in the coming weeks, we'll be looking in depth at how it actually works when you want to release anxiety and not shut it down. But okay, besides the child actually telling you, I'm nervous about something, I'm worried about something, I'm bothered by the way I feel, there are many other symptoms that we can see, just like the ones in ourselves. For example, we mentioned our own irritability, but in children, you know, we see their irritability, we see their meltdowns, okay, like they're losing it, right? They're cracking up, sometimes at school, sometimes in other public places, and largely at home. So they're um, they're exploding. Okay, that can we look at it, we see they're angry, but we don't always see that there's this disturbance under the surface that we're talking about here. Another thing we can see in children is just what we saw in ourselves, which is avoidance patterns. They don't want to go to the party. They don't want to go to up the stairs. They don't want to go out of the house. They don't want to try the new thing. All new experiences, you know, provoke either, you know, a tantrum or a protest or an avoidance response. When you're seeing that, you see that the child has that problem inside. Constant reassurance seeking, all right? So asking you the same question over and over or variations of the same question indicate that anxious process is very alive and well. Perfectionism. It's kind of like, I can't just, you know, the kid can't just let it go. You know, it has to rubbing it out, starting again, rubbing out, starting again, sweating and suffering with the fact that it isn't good enough. Rigidity, inflexibility, that fear of doing new things. Now, there's also other signs, like if a child has any particular disorder, let's say a tic disorder. Some people think like a tic disorder where the child is twitching or blinking excessively, certain movements or coughing, there's motor tics and vocal tics. Those are not symptoms of anxiety, okay? However, if somebody, this is a biological issue in the body, but if a person has that issue and they have more of it going on, more ticking, as they might call it. Any symptom we have that we have more frequently, like say migraine headaches, also there's a biological underpinning. They're not caused just by feeling anxious. But if we are having more of them, more stomach aches, more backaches, if the child has more strep throat, more anything, it can be because there's more anxiety under the surface that's aggravating current symptoms. Even if you have a mental health disorder, um, the mental health disorder can be aggravated by the anxiety going on at a particular point in time. So if a person, let's say, was prone to depression and and their mood, the depressed mood, is occurring more severely or more frequently because of the anxiety below the system, below the surface there. There's things going on that's making the person anxious. So that anxious feeling can aggravate whatever physical or emotional conditions we or our children have already. So body pains, can escalate also. In a child beyond the toilet training years, when we see that they're having a lot of accidents, this can indicate a tremendous amount of anxiety in their system. So, a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, or older child who is now having some sort of incontinence, uh, that can be because of things that are going on that are making the child very anxious. A feeling just like us when the child is dizzy, spacey, whatever. Now, we can't see his dizziness, that's an internal state, but when the child seems distracted all the time, not listening, and maybe the teachers are complaining that the child is not focused. It's not always ADHD, okay? Like ADHD is a distraction, like when the airplane goes out the window and the kid is, oh, look at that airplane, but there's an internal distraction that many children have with their thoughts and their daydreams and their feelings, which may be a reflection of what happened this morning before school, that fight that they had going out the door with a sibling or with you, or the argument that they witnessed between you and your spouse, or the fact that in the background, the home is kind of falling apart, the marriage is dissolving, or whatever. So the kid is spacey. Like if you see a child who's not concentrating well, not always because of trauma going on. There's a lot of things going on inside a child, but spaciness itself should be investigated. It's like I said, it's not always the kind of distractibility we see in attention deficit disorder. Other symptoms that we can see in a child that indicate that anxious feeling are when the child gives up very quickly. That's like that form of avoidance that we do. You know, we might not try it at all. If I feel anxious about how my icing on my cake is going to turn out, so I'm not going to make the icing, I'll buy it. Okay. But another form of that is, okay, I'll try it. Oh, something goes wrong, I give up instead of persevere and overcome that little glitch. So giving up easily can indicate that anxious feeling. A high, squeaky voice in anybody of any age is the result of tightened vocal cords. And so when somebody is feeling very relaxed, their voice deepens and it just goes down and relax, it says, because the vocal cords are relaxed. And when the vocal cords are tightened, we get this like whatever, we start squeaking. And children do it, and teenagers and young adults, so you can hear as their voice goes up that they're feeling uncomfortable. Indecisiveness, the inability to make decisions. This is another one that we suffer with, second guessing ourselves. You can see that the child can't decide. So again, I'm giving you ones that you can see, okay? Do you want to do this or this? Do you want to wear this or that? Do you want to go here or there? And the child refusing to make that decision and saying, I don't care, I don't know, you decide, whatever, okay? That can indicate a fear of making that decision, of committing to something. There's bodily symptoms, trembling, of course, if you're making a speech in front of the class, handshaking, but stuttering and stammering, or an increase in stuttering and stammering for somebody who has that condition. A decreased interest in food can indicate that anxious feeling, because it's hard to eat when you're distressed. So if in a child who does like to eat, when they change that pattern and they're just unable to eat, that they're not feeling calm inside. And then the behaviors of checking things, rechecking things, like I said before, asking for reassurance, these are a form of hypervigilance, like a focus on looking for trouble. Like, is there somebody outside? Is there somebody inside? Is there something wrong? Talking a lot about those things can indicate an anxious underlying feeling. All right, those are some of the things that we can see in a child. And I'm not covering every possible thing again, but those are some things that we can see. There's a lot of things that we can't see that are similar to the ones that we talked about in ourselves, that go on inside of our children of any age, okay? Feelings of shame embarrassment to humiliation. Okay, like if you correct your child in public a little bit too loudly or in front of his friend or something, your kid may say nothing. Depends on your child's personality. Later you might hear about it, or you may never hear about it. Except, let's say, 20 years later, when the child talks about that time when you were in the pizza store and you made this remark, 30 years ago, and you can't believe it that the child actually remembers this because you forget because you were a good parent and you never meant anything by it. You maybe just a dandruff off his coat or something and said, oh, you got dandruff here. And his friend was standing beside him and he was mortified. Okay. You won't know all the times that your child is having that kind of pain inside, shame, embarrassment, humiliation. A lot of times, kids are very obsessed and don't talk about it, about various fears of death and dying, fear of you dying, fear of killing you even accidentally, fears of being robbed, fears of being kidnapped. A lot of times young kids will tell us about that. But after a while, especially with all the reassuring parents, oh, we got the alarms on and, don't worry about it. After a while, they stop telling you, but the anxiety may still be in their system. You don't know. Fear of the bullies that they're encountering all around, whether that might be a teacher bully, a peer bully, a kid in an older grade bully, you as a bully, your spouse as a bully, and most notably, siblings as bullies. A lot of times, people come into therapy, much later in life, and they're talking about the dynamic between them and their 50-year-old brother. Okay, and let's say they're now the brother's 50 and the person who's talking is 47 or 44. Let's say, let's make it look a little younger, right? So that when this kid was little and the parents left the older one to babysit, there was terror in the house, which the kid, when he was little, tried to say, I don't want you to just leave me with him. And the parents said, oh, it'll be fine, it'll be fine. And then, again, the trauma of like this overwhelming situation for the littler kid, where the older one wouldn't let him do what he wanted to do or play what he wanted to play or eat what he wanted to eat or whatever it was, or he was actually rough with him physically. All of that, maybe he scared him, maybe he was actually horrible to him, um, these things can stay for a lifetime and affect us later, but we don't necessarily know that they're going on inside our children. Fear of something bad happening is very popular among children, teens, and adults. A vague sense. Now, if we read the paper too much or something or know about world events, we should, that feeds into it. But again, some people will avoid, and children will want to avoid hearing scary stories, hearing about bad things because they become so overwhelmed they can't cope with it. But the things that we're not telling us, the fear of rejection at school, at home, of being left out, of being judged, of being mocked, of being punished, fear of failing, those things reside inside a lot of young people and us adults, and they're not telling us. There's other things we may know about their fears because they're screaming about it, fears of their bugs or fears of storms or fears of choking or pain or illness. We may know because they're avoiding and they're not wanting whatever, but again, we don't always know. As the kid gets older, they hold more and more things back. The kinds of things that are particularly not going to be told to us are what I'm going to call secret rituals. So in children, even who have overt rituals, like a child who is coming for treatment, let's say for obsessive compulsive disorder of the washing kind or the cleaning kind, where the parent sees that the child is in the shower for 2 hours at a time, or won't touch certain things because afterwards that there's so much washing that has to be done. There's no way for the parent to know that the child is also counting things in her head, right? And very often, if the parent is part of the interview with the child when all of this is being assessed, the parent will be shocked to learn that the kid has got all sorts of mental rituals that they're doing, like I have to do everything 3 times or odd numbers, or I have to do something before and something after or do it in such a certain way. and the parent doesn't know and didn't recognize. Teachers also, like a kid is sitting in class and the kid is moving her foot, first to left, then to the right, then under, then up. And it has to be done that way. And the teacher doesn't know that those leg movements have to be done that way or that they even exist necessarily. Kids have things they're hiding, not only kids, but adults too. So again, fear of looking ridiculous, being exposed, being misunderstood, being the only one in the world who's doing this. And kids have more feelings of being the only one in the world just because they haven't read as much as we have. They're not exposed to as much information yet. They just haven't had time to learn that other people are doing things as well. Um, compulsive masturbation is something that happens for a lot of kids and they're not discussing it. Um, Gender identity, in today's world, and especially among the poor kids who have an overdose of, of gender education, a lot of them are scared that they're not normal. They're not normal when it comes to their normal sexual feelings. And they're not even sure if they're normal, whatever that means anymore, since everything is normal, but they become confused and unsettled. Well, maybe I'm bisexual. Maybe, I like people of the same sex. Like, what's this feeling I have? Like, they're very anxious about that stuff. And the chances of them telling you are very slim. um, Kids start with hoarding compulsions. That is where they're collecting things they don't need, but they cannot get rid of it. They have reasons, but really under it is this pervasive anxiety. And they're not telling you about it exactly. They may look to you like they have a messy room or too much clutter, but you can see kind of the end result, but not necessarily the intense feeling underneath it. Kids thinking bad thoughts, wishing harm on somebody or themselves, not sharing that, but feeling anxious, very anxious about it. Um, Kids feeling discouraged, hopeless, miserable, unhappy, depressed. They're not always sharing these feelings. It can come as quite a shock to parents. Apparently, there's something like, was it 2 million or 2 billion, some huge number. I can't remember. I just recently read it of kids who are not diagnosed, not brought to the parents' attention, but clearly suffering from depression in the United States. So many that are keeping these feelings to themselves. Very often, actually, when a child is being abused by someone in any way, physical abuse, sexual abuse, like I said before, bullying, they're not coming forward to tell anybody. Um, and then there's a whole class of feelings where the child feels off, doesn't have the words to describe his or her own experience of himself, and doesn't talk about it as a result, doesn't even know what he's feeling. Now, the bottom point of all of this is that we need to know that we do not know when our child is really okay and when our child is not. And as a result, we have to parent proactively so that we want to give our children all sorts of information, education, tools, and strategies that will help them when they're feeling off. And we're assuming that they will be feeling off because that is normal for all of us. Okay, we feel off, so we're not, some of the things we'll see, many of the things we will not see, some of the things we'll know, many of the things we will not know. But if we can give them um, something, okay, some orientation to the world of distressed feelings, then we're going to help them get started. So now we're going to look at some of the things we can do, and also just keep in mind as parents also that some of the things we can see, we should be acting on. If people are telling us straight out, the teachers, the school, our neighbors, our friends, and our relatives are saying, maybe you should get that child assessed professionally, well, maybe we should, okay? If you're seeing symptoms that are really holding the child back from something, yes, get a professional opinion. You're not expected to know all the possible diagnostic criteria for what could be going on in the child, and saying that things are just like a disturbance underneath the surface. Sometimes we need to look much more closely and see how that disturbance can be helped in a serious way, all right? And also, if a child's suddenly experiencing a change from calm and happy to spacey, distressed, not going to school, not able to get up and go, again, even if the child doesn't tell us what's going on, we may need a professional input, make sure that there is no trauma going on, nothing severe is going on inside the child's, like the anxiety is overwhelming. Don't leave this up to yourself to try and figure it all out, okay? But anyways, as far as moving forward with the child, we're going to want to let the child know, first of all, like a couple of main things about the world of feelings, which will help. For example, we want the child to know that feelings exist. And I'm going to go into a little bit of these, and that everybody has, everybody, including us and all the child's friends and all the adults and the whole world, everybody has disturbed, uncomfortable, and bothersome anxious types of feelings, and that these feelings are expressed not just inside of us, but physically. There's a way to know about them, and that there are things that can be done. That calming the physical body can help the emotions, and calming the emotions can help the physical body. And so we want our children to leave our houses having learned this basic starting point, okay? And then there's much more detail that we're going to look at this now, and then in the course that's coming up soon, we're going to look at it in much more detail. So the first thing is that we want children to know that anxious feelings are normal. And we can do this by making sure we're talking about feelings. So often, we'll tell a story like, oh, the neighbor had a robbery, and the police came to investigate, but they don't know what happened. Like, that's the story, okay? Like, we tell the facts, something happened, and we don't talk about, even though the thing that we're talking about is actually something, horrible, like a robbery, that's scary. Um, we might leave out all the feelings as if there are no feelings. So what we want to do is kind of focus on feelings, make it clear in our house that feelings do happen. Gosh, I was shocked to hear that the neighbors had a robbery and the police can't find the guy. And I'm kind of feeling like, oh, like, I hope they do. I mean, I wonder what's going on in the neighborhood. It makes me kind of nervous. Now, to tell the story with those feelings is better because um, you think your child's not going to feel nervous hearing that there was a robbery next door? Like, if you don't feel nervous and only the child feels nervous, then the child feels like, oh, there's something wrong with me. Like, I've got the wrong feelings. Like, you seem okay. Or you just told the story as if nothing happened, but like I'm feeling really distressed. So, and again, that's not going to encourage the child to come forward. When we're talking enough about feelings, then our child will talk about feelings too. And talking about feelings is one way to begin to move anxious feelings out of the system. When we're not talking about them, the anxious feelings tend to go into the system, aggravating all of our physical symptoms. So whether it's a temporary headache or whether it becomes a chronic pattern of headaches or whether we become sick, this is a lot to do with how we manage our feelings. So we want to make feelings part of life. And in parenting talk, a lot of it is about, okay, it's time to get up, time to go to school, don't do this, do that. And we're not really focusing on the inner world as if there is no inner world. Um, like, for example, we might say to a child, look, I asked you twice to turn your device off and get ready for bed, okay? And we're not saying to the child, you know what, I'm starting to get frustrated. I've asked you twice already, right? So as if the I asked you twice is the only thing that matters. It's not the only thing that matters for your child's well-being. It's the I'm getting frustrated part that is important. I have feelings. Um, let's say you're looking at something, you're trying to make a choice. I don't know, this one or this one, this one or this one. It's okay. Add this, say like, oh, I feel so conflicted. I feel so unsure. I'm not sure which one, this one or this one. Talk about those feelings. And if the child it can't decide, instead of saying, come on, decide already, we can say to the child, it's hard to decide. You're feeling unsure, right? Not quite sure which one. Like, how about, like, let's close in on it because we have to get moving. Okay, but still we have mentioned something going on inside. So we want to be talking about feelings. That's the first thing. The other thing we want to do is link the feelings to the physical sensations. And this may be a little counterintuitive for you. But if you have an obvious stress headache, say to the child, oh, all this is giving me such a headache. Like I feel so stressed out and now I have a headache. Now, you might think, what is the reason for sharing that with the child? I'm so anxious I can't eat. Oh, I'm so nervous. My hands are sweating. My heart is beating. Oh God, I'm so scared. I'm having trouble sleeping because I'm so worried. Why tell the child all that? Won't that make it worse? You might think, okay. And I'm going to say, no, that's not going to make it worse. What that's going to do is teach the child that the feelings and the physical symptoms are related. When children don't know, um, they get terrified of their physical feelings that are happening as if they're happening by themselves. Like when a person has a panic attack, let's say they're scared of something, a spider or something. Well, I don't know. They're scared. People start having panic attacks. Okay, and in their body is overwhelmed with the symptoms of panic, which are all physical. Their heart is beating. They're feeling dizzy. They're feeling lightheaded. They have pain. They're sweating profusely. They're hot. They're cold. They can't eat. Um, their stomach's upset, whatever it is, and they rush themselves to the hospital thinking they're dying, or they're believing that they're falling to pieces and they're cracking up, and or they're having a heart attack. A lot of that is from lack of education of the actual connection between all of the adrenaline, anxiety, and physical distress that we have. So when we link it, we say, yes, I'm feeling unwell because of the anxiety that I am feeling, then a person will always know that these symptoms that I'm feeling are from this emotional feeling. And that actually helps the body not become the focus. We don't want the child to be somatizing. Now, why I'm saying this with caution here is because we can't stop these things from happening completely. We're just doing what parents can do to help. All right. So we want to say that we've done our part. Once we understand, okay, my head hurts, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling scared, the next step is to be talking about what we can do about all of that. Okay, not necessarily just popping our Tylenol or whatever it is, but having, I need to sit down, breathe and calm down, get myself settled, maybe if I have some chamomile tea, and you have a bunch of strategies to calm the physical body, which you say, now I feel better, I'm calming down, now I can begin to think. And you're showing your child that I can go from a very distressed, anxious, disturbed, unbalanced state, and I can do things. There are steps I can take to bring myself back down, calm my anxiety, calm my nerves, so to speak, feel better physically, take away that pain and distress, and begin to function again. And that is a very big, important lesson that you want your children to have, so that they're not feeling out of control and overwhelmed with the distress that they feel, or that they have to go to drowning it out in very dysfunctional ways. Because especially teenagers, eventually they find very dysfunctional ways of making anxiety go away, whether it's cutting themselves, starving themselves, becoming addicted to substances. I mean, there are some functional ones too, like overstudying and overworking and, achieving great things at some terrible cost usually. But still, there's also a variety of very unhealthy things that we do to make anxious feelings go away, including huge meltdowns and temper tantrums that disturb our and destroy sometimes our most important relationships. So we want to give our children that toolkit, which is something that we will be exploring in the course that follows. Um, let me just see if there's something else I want to say right now. Yes, one other point. There's things we can do for the education of children at every age, but one of them, bibliotherapy, is the use of books that bring feelings to the surface in the home. For young children, there's books like I Feel Nervous, that's a title of a book, or Wemberly Worried, or F is for Feelings. These are names of books, many, many more. You'll find them in your local library and bookstore. Picture books for young children that talk about the inner world and gives you as a parent an opportunity to discuss things that make people nervous. And when you're reading those books, you'll discuss hopefully your feelings of nervousness and give your child an opportunity to explore when his feelings of anxious feelings come to the surface as well. Through the characters of the books, you can open that up. And for older children, there are much more sophisticated books that really go into the mechanics of anxious feelings and what people can do about it. And among the books that you might bring home, you should include some of these educational stress management types of books for teenagers so they can learn at a young age what to do besides join their friends smoking. You know what I mean? You want to show them that there are other things that they can do. There's also an amazing array of educational material online that you can screen and filter out. But there's TED Talks that are very appropriate for children to watch about how people felt very troubled, very threatened, very attacked in the real ways, whatever it is, how they coped, how they succeeded, how they overcame. And it's nice for children to come into, this was the dark period, and this is what I did, and here's the bright period. And not just to have stories of people who are just at the bright period, because like, what happened to all the struggle, you know? When you show children stories of real struggle, it helps them to meet the struggle inside with courage and with a map that points forward. There's a wonderful thing on YouTube called Humankind Stories. Look that up. Again, pick out the ones that you think are educational for your children, but it's an amazing resource of challenges that people have. And amightygirl.com is stories, especially for girls, but boys will be interested as well, of difficulties that people overcame, times of feeling ostracized, diminished, disempowered, and the feelings that all of that generated and the steps they took to overcome it. I'll just pause there for a second, Jillian. How is our timing? Did you want to?
Yeah, we
Yes,
actually have some really great questions coming
good.
in.
Okay, so
So
why don't we try
I
answering those? Yeah.
I want to get to some of these questions. I also
Mhm.
want to get to people wanting to join the course.
Yes, yeah,
So let me get to all of these things and more, and make sure that people can stick on the line with us for just a little bit longer.
sure.
So I'm going to go ahead and give you all the details about the upcoming course. I know that people are saying, how can I continue? How can I continue? I want more answers. I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. And then we will come back to some of these amazing questions also in our chat box right here. And as I mentioned, we had so many questions come in ahead of time. So
Okay.
let's get moving on here. We are now inviting you to continue on and join Sarah Chana on her weekly live classes for the next 6 weeks, which will include week 1, feeling, facing, and erasing fear. Understanding, greeting, and treating your own fear and your child's fear. Learn how to apply all strategies to yourself and your child. Followed by how to stop worrying. Gain the skills to finally stop worrying. For example, will my daughter ever get married? Will they like it for my performance at work or a dinner party? What will the results show after a routine medical checkup? Then in week 3, we're going to discuss eliminating fear. So let Sarah Chana walk you through the steps to eliminate fear and calm your nerves. For example, fear of spiders, robbers, dogs, needles, thunderstorms, anxiety before giving a presentation or taking a test, that panicky feeling you have when stuck in an elevator, or fear of flying, fear of upcoming dental surgery, and so on. Then in week 4, improving sleep, calming the system, and restoring balance after frightening or overwhelming experiences. Get the strategies you need to help the body relax, fall asleep, and deepen sleep. Learn how to have deep, refreshing 5-minute power naps during the day to help compensate for inadequate rest or sleep at night. Help eliminate the effects of traumatic or overwhelming life experiences and restore a sense of safety and stability. Then we'll go into creating deep inner security. Replace feelings of vulnerability and negativity with feelings of steady confidence and optimism to see you through every life situation. And finally, a full hour Q&A to gain solutions to your personal questions through a live Q&A and implementation session. Each ongoing live class will be interactive, allowing you to get your biggest questions answered and stay completely anonymous if you choose. They will all take place on Thursdays at 12 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Israel time, and our first class starts next week, Thursday, January 11th. But don't worry if you can't attend a live class, a recording will always be available to you in your own personal membership area, just 24 hours after the class takes place, and you'll have that available to you for a lifetime to listen to or download at your convenience. Plus, you'll also get a full course on obsessive compulsive disorder. Could it be OCD? It's not always obvious. It's not always an obvious condition, especially to parents. In fact, parents often mistake symptoms of OCD in their child or teen as just being quirky or eccentric and go along with them so as not to upset their youngster. In doing so, however, they may accidentally prolong and intensify an actual mental health disorder. Fortunately, OCD is highly treatable once identified. This exclusive course is designed to help you understand your child's confusing and/or challenging behaviors and to know when more than ordinary parenting is in order. Plus, you'll also get Breaking the Cycle Family Anger. Anger is a normal emotion that both parents and children experience. However, when poorly managed, it can cause unnecessary pain and suffering for the entire family. Learn how to help yourself and your child manage, heal, and respectfully express frustration, upset, rage, and all other shades of anger. You'll also get Overcoming Depression and Uncovering Happiness, a full workshop to discover the best path for your individual journey to overcoming disappointment, sadness, and feelings of hopelessness, and uncover your unique potential, self-worth, and strength. Excuse me. And finally, Sarah Chana's brand new ebook, Better Behavior Now. Put an end to inappropriate, harmful, hurtful, and self-defeating, uncooperative, or otherwise unacceptable behavior once and for all, and learn exactly how to get your child to make lasting positive behavioral changes. As you can see, Sarah Chana will be walking you through various aspects of parenting and emotional well-being to ensure that you and your family are set to thrive. You'll have one-on-one support through this program, and we'll have this unique opportunity to get your personal questions answered that you haven't been able to get answered before. Most importantly, by investing in yourself and your family now, you'll discover how to reinvent your inner monologue and face your daily insecurities, fears, and worries with strength and confidence. You'll be able to put an end to sleepless nights and worrying about the things you can't control, and finally have the energy to enjoy life. Plus, retrain your brain to react to stress with calm and acceptance instead of panic and anxiety, so you can be the guide that your child needs. And avoid the consuming feelings of unease and self-doubt by learning to be comfortable in vulnerable situations. As I mentioned earlier, we've never offered an opportunity quite like this before, but we listened to all of our members' requests, and we've created a special online community for parents from all around the world to come and get the guidance you need and deserve alongside a one-of-a-kind mentor. Plus, to make it accessible to everyone, we are offering a special payment plan option when you register. And as I mentioned, for today only, because you attended this webinar, you will get a special webinar attendee discount for just $497. So instead of paying the full price of $13.97, it's been discounted to $6.97. And now, like I mentioned, for 24 hours, you as an attendee will get the special $497 discount. Plus, payment plan options will be available as soon as you click to register. So let me go ahead and put the link in your chat box right now. It's www.jewishworkshops.com/anxiety free. And I'm going to put that right in your chat box. You should be able to see that. I'll also go ahead and put it right up here for you. So it's www.jewishworkshops.com/anxiety free. And that includes the full 6 weeks of achieving anxiety relief, plus the additional bonus courses that are all going to be pre-recorded and available to you in your own personal membership area to listen to or download at your convenience. And those are Could It Be OCD?, Breaking the Cycle Family Anger, plus Overcoming Depression and Uncovering Happiness. And as I mentioned, Sarah Chana's brand new ebook, Better Behavior Now, is also going to be right in your membership area for you to download. So as soon as you go ahead and click to register, please come on back and just put your name or your initials and the words "I'm in." I would love to be able to welcome you to our community, see how many spots are being taken. We do like to try to keep our communities as intimate as possible so that we can make sure that during each live session, you'll get as many questions answered as possible. Sarah Chana will be able to really give personalized solutions throughout the entire course. So if you can just come back and let me know that you're in, that would be great. And then if, of course, you're having any technical difficulties, please just put your name and your telephone number in the chat box. I am more than happy to have someone give you a call right away so that we can help you get registered and answer any questions you may have. Let me just get to some of these questions. What does a membership area mean? So as soon as you join, the courses are going to be available to you online, and you'll get information to join the live sessions. Plus, we have what's called a membership area. You'll get a username and password to log into, so that those are just available for you and you alone to watch privately. How many sessions is the webinar? So the full course of Achieving Anxiety includes the full 6 weeks of classes. It's 1 class a week every Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Israel time. But as I mentioned, if you can't make it to the live class, or you'd like to re-listen to the classes, which I know a number of our members do, there will always be a recording available to you to listen to or download at your convenience. Somebody's asking about payment plans. Absolutely, there are payment plan options available, and that's as soon as you click on the link to register. It's let me put that back in here again. It's on your screen, but if you're calling in by phone, it's www.jewishworkshops.com/anxiety free, and there'll be a click to register button. As soon as you do that, you'll get transferred to an order form, which you just put your information in, and you can choose the payment plan option that best fits your needs. I can actually take you there right now and show that to you, so that if you have any questions, you'll come right to this, this page, and it'll give you all of your bonus options, and it'll show you everything that you're going to receive, plus the special introductory rate discount. When you click right here on the register now, the page also shows all of the different classes. It'll give you all the information I just gave you on the site. Right here is your order form, and you can come down here to payment plans, as you can see right here. You can either pay $497 today, or you can break it up into payments over the next several months and choose the one that best fits your needs. So if you click on 3 payments of $165.67, it'll actually also give you the day and the month that you'll be paying for the next several payments. How long is each of the webinar sessions? Each session on Thursdays is going to be 1 hour, and that'll include your face-to-face time with Sarah Chana, plus any time that she's able to give at the end of each class for questions. And then, of course, that last 6th class will be a full hour Q&A. Okay, so let me get to some of these other questions as well. I'd also love to be able to welcome our brand new members. Let me go back here. Please come on back, as I mentioned, and just write that you're in. I'd like to be able to welcome you. Welcome YB, great to see you. Welcome Sarah, welcome Bela, and Khani, welcome. Great to have all of you here. For all of the Canadians on the line, the price is in US dollars. To keep that in mind, I can see that that's some of the questions here. Okay, if you have any additional questions about purchasing, please again feel free to put your name and telephone number right into the chat box. I'm happy to have someone give you a call as soon as possible, and we'll get any of those questions answered. In case I don't get to those right now on the line, there's also a live chat option available to you right on that page, jewishworkshops.com/anxiety free, and you can get any questions answered there too. Sarah Chana, let me go ahead and get to some of the questions that are coming in here.
Yes.
We had a great question earlier. Sorry, let me go back through, scroll back through here. Yeah, here we go. I'm worried that when I express my feelings of doubt or anxiety or fear to my child, that will actually just make them more uncomfortable. I thought that if I was able to show more of a sense of security and confidence, that would then make them in turn feel secure. How can I balance that?
Yeah, we want to keep in mind that almost everything we do in parenting that's intuitive is wrong. It's like our natural parenting thing. Of course, that's what we would all think, right? That I'm afraid of the thunder, so I'm going to show my child that I'm not afraid of the thunder. And that'll help my child not be afraid of the thunder. Okay, the kid is all, "Oh, what's that noise? What's that noise?" Right? So um, even if, let's say, that worked in the moment, where we were calm and the child took a look at us and calmed down in the moment. What we're not doing there for the child, what we're failing to do, is give the child a map for what can be done with anxious feelings in general. Okay, like this is not the last thing that's going to happen in his or her little life, that there's a thunderstorm, right? So if we could make this problem go away, it does not make the problem of anxious feelings go away. So what's more powerful is for the parent to say, okay, when I have anxious feelings, which are normal, okay, like we all have anxious feelings, like there's nothing to be ashamed about or scared about having, like we get anxious about having anxious feelings. So now we have two feelings. We have the anxious feelings and the anxiety about the anxious feelings. And if we get rid of that second level, we're going to be doing so much better on the chemical level because every level releases a certain amount of, I'm going to call it nasty chemistry. So let's say we're afraid of thunderstorms and that releases, let's pretend, 30 units of fight or flight chemistry, adrenaline and all that stuff. Um, and then we're anxious about feeling anxious. Like then we have 30 more. So now we have 60, if you can follow my logic here. Now, if we could get rid of that second level, we're going to function better, right? So like that's one thing. We want to show that ourselves and our children that having feelings of anxiety is part of the normal human experience. We are not all afraid of thunderstorms, but we're all afraid of something. Okay, so and it could be fear of more interpersonal things like failure and judgment and rejection, those kinds of things. Or for some people, it's more externalized things like dogs and like we said, thunderstorms and robbers and this kind of stuff. And for most of us, it's all of that. Okay, it's a little bit of everything. So we want to show the child, I am afraid, and here's what I do when I'm afraid. Okay, that is the key right there. If I'm never afraid, then I can't show the child, here's what I do when I'm afraid. And then that leaves the child tool-less. Okay, then what should he do? Well, when he finds that his friend offers him a drink and that makes him feel less afraid, then, oh, okay, that's what I'll do, right? Or start puffing those cigarettes because then I feel more confident and more secure, then that's what I'll do. Like, if you don't show them what to do, then they will rely on their peers in adolescence to learn what to do. Okay, they call cutting oneself is a copycat coping mechanism. So if there's one kid who's figured out that cutting herself reduces her anxiety, soon so many people in the class will be doing it as well. We children learn from each other. Okay, we all learn from each other. Let your child learn from you. So now you're afraid of the thunderstorm. What are you going to do about that? Um, and show your child that avoidance is not going to be your solution of choice. You're not going to drink yourself into a stupor to watch the thunderstorm. You're not going to, go in the basement and shut all the lights and watch TV to pretend there isn't a thunderstorm. You're going to do some other tool. Now, really, I'm not going to go into that tool here because I'm just going to say that there are tools, and that's what the course is all about. What are those tools? What on earth could you do during a thunderstorm? So please, join in to find out more. Okay.
Great. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to go ahead and welcome our new members. Welcome, Adina. Welcome, Bracha, Danielle, and Deborah. Welcome, Gitti. Wonderful to have all of you. It is so great to see. Please just come on back, as I mentioned, and put your name or your initials right into the chat box with the words "I'm in" so that I can welcome you as well. And I do see some people with some additional questions or technical difficulties. Please just come on back and put your name and telephone number in. I've got some wonderful people ready to give you a call and help you register over the phone. I want to make sure any questions of yours are answered. Absolutely, we can help you with your payment plan options, but we just need your phone number and your name so we can give you a call. And welcome, AH. You're in. Wonderful. Great to have you as well. Okay, Sarahana, we have some additional questions.
Okay.
Let me see where that went.
Hmm.
I get very, very stressed out and anxious when my kids fight and argue. I feel so helpless, and it makes me feel like I'm not doing enough as a parent. How can I um, move on from that?
Mm-hmm. Well, your feeling's normal. So, first of all, accept it. Um, I don't think there's any person who really just sits back and goes like, okay, go at it, guys, kill each other. It's very anxiety provoking to us to see that. Often when we're feeling anxious about what's going on in the moment, we react with anxiety. Now there's a difference between feeling anxious, like in the thunderstorm situation, and reacting in anxiety. For example, let's say I'm just going to go to the thunderstorm thing. I'll come back to the siblings. But let's say I was feeling scared in the anxious situation, in the thunderstorm situation. I said to my kid, oh, that lightning, oh, that thunder. Oh, and I start running around in circles, having like a freak out. Okay. That that's not what I want to show the children. Having the feeling of anxiety is normal and comfortable. Not comfortable, sorry, it's normal and uncomfortable. But that's the normal part that I want the children to know about, that yes, I also feel anxious, but I don't want to model dysfunctional ways of coping. So now to the siblings, when they're fighting, it's okay to say that you feel distressed. Guys, I'm really uncomfortable watching what's going on right here. Okay, this is very upsetting to me and it's making me nervous. I'm afraid somebody's going to hurt each other. Like all those words about your feelings empower you in parenting in so many ways. Okay, we could write a book on just that one sentence. Okay, of giving the child the name of the feelings and what that does interpersonally, intrapersonally, in you, in them, and everything. But we're not going to do it now. Okay, but um, but the one thing it does, as far as our purposes goes here, is it says you have feelings and they are provoked by situations that happen in front of you, and then you're going to show them what you do while you have those feelings. Now on a practical level here, you need a toolkit for a program in your own mind for how you will deal with sibling rivalry, conflict, the actual fighting that's going on in front of you, whether there is danger, whether it's just loud and annoying, whether there's some threat, like are they poking each other's eyes out, or are they just, fighting over a toy and they're grabbing it? Are you really terrified that somebody's going to get hurt? Because if so, you better say so. Like, I am terrified that one of you is going to get badly hurt. Put that down. Okay. Like if you're terrified, then your own adrenaline will kick in and you'll be speaking louder than you would otherwise. But if you're just feeling like uncomfortable, distressed, anxious, and so on, the next step is for you to be prepared for that situation, which is inevitable if you have more than one child. Like, and if they're boys particularly, but anyways, you need to have a protocol. So for dealing with that conflict. And if you do join us in the course, ask that question again, and we'll go over, because we will go over that specific situation. We need to know what to do in the moment. And as we do it and we're effective, that reduces our feelings of anxiety going forward. Because what you said is you feel helpless. And that's the exact feeling that we don't want you left with and you don't want to leave your child with. Because biologically, there is an imperative inside of ourselves to have control and to not be left helpless. And helplessness will fuel our anxiety tremendously. Okay, that's helplessness and anxiety go together. So we need to become empowered. So the solution ultimately is for you to know what to do when your children are in conflict. So when you read Better Behavior Now, actually that will help you quite a lot with that. Okay.
Great, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
I had a question come in. I have older children. The youngest is 18 years old. Will the course also focus on older children into adulthood?
Absolutely. Like our older children are so incredibly anxious because they're human and they are embarking on the huge journey of life. They're about to leave home, which is anxiety provoking. They're about to date, which is anxiety provoking. They're learning to drive, which is scary. They're planning a career, which is overwhelming. I mean, yes, they have more problems than younger children do. So we'll be looking at them.
Okay, good. Thanks so much. And I do want to go ahead and get to some of our brand new members. Welcome, JD. Wonderful to have you. I'm so glad that you are here as well. Please come on back, as I mentioned. Just let me know that you're in so that I can welcome you as well. And some questions about the course. Let me go ahead and get back to that too. So as you can see, the full course of Achieving Anxiety Relief is going to be the live 6-week course each Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Israel time. And again, we'll walk you through feeling, facing, and erasing fear, how to stop worrying, followed by eliminating fear, improving sleep, calming the system, and restoring balance, plus creating a deep inner security, and then that final 1-hour Q&A. And as I mentioned, all of the sessions will be recorded for you not only to be able to listen to if you can't attend a live class, but of course, even if you attend and like to repeat, take notes, rewatch, it's always good to get those reminders. Those will always be available to you to listen to or download at your convenience. Plus, the full package is going to also include pre-recorded classes for you to enjoy at your leisure on could it be OCD, breaking the cycle family anger, overcoming depression and uncovering happiness, and Sarah Chana's brand new ebook on better behavior now. So the whole package, all inclusive, has been fully marked down just for you attending today for the next 24 hours to $497. And as I mentioned, again, payment plan options are available. We do want to make it accessible to you and not have price be something that is standing in your way. So please go ahead. I will put that link right into your chat box again. It's www.jewishworkshops.com/anxiety free. And again, if you're having trouble registering or have specific questions that you'd like to be addressed about how to purchase or your payment plan options, please just put your phone number and your name into the chat box and we'll give you a call to help you register. And of course, we'll still be able to get you in at that reduced rate of $497. Sarah Chana, we also had somebody asking, so you had mentioned about how to, cope and deal with people or children who are showing that their irritability is coming out, in temper tantrums and they're losing it. And once we've seen that, once we see the irritability, but they're in full-blown temper tantrum mode, what is it that we can do at that point to help, shut that down and help get them through their anxious moment?
Mm-hmm. There's actually a lot of reasons why somebody might be having a meltdown, and anxiety is only one of them, although there's always some level of anxiety that is there in addition to everything else. The trouble is that the fight and flight chemistry and the adrenaline and the cortisol and all this stuff that's released at the time when somebody's having a fight attack or a flight attack, which a meltdown is some combination of, where you're throwing things around, you're screaming, you're yelling and cursing and slamming and all this stuff, a major tantrum, explosive outburst, whatever you want to call it. The chemistry interferes with the frontal cortex, the functioning there where we do our planning and our thinking and our consequences and all this logical stuff. So we're basically uneducable and unreachable during the moment of explosion, okay? Now, we don't stay in that explosive state for very long. So somebody might have, like a screaming thing, and then it becomes actually a little bit more controlled as they march off and they're threatening and they're slamming and like the more time passes, the more calculated the behavior is, and it's you're still not reachable, but it dies down is what I'm saying. The whole thing goes from like a real emergency response in the person to less so. And then at a certain point it stops, okay? Like the actual fight or flight thing stops. And that's the beginning time. We're not able to reach in before that. Now, if there's a small child and he's endangering himself or the environment, whatever, by throwing himself around or throwing other people or throwing things, you can usually fairly safely interfere with somebody who's very small. But, somebody who's your size or larger, you're just going to back off and let them finish what they're doing. If you need to call the police, I guess you'll have to. I hope that they're not being too destructive, right? They're just making usually what people are doing is making an awful scene, which is very distressing. We do not reach out at that time. All the reaching out is going to happen afterwards. And again, I actually cover a lot of that in Better Behavior Now, because it's one of the more common problems that we face in family life, where either a child, a teen, ourselves, or a spouse reacts in a panicky type of form. The tantrum has that quality to it. It's like the person has lost the ability to quietly communicate whatever is going on and is now frantic. And that's the anxiety level that's under it. And there is a whole teaching and training process that we can learn and implement and use it to address these and make a change in our family dynamics as a result of that. So yeah, it's not in the moment that we're going to be able to do anything.
Great.
Sorry.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
absolutely. Thank you. And the question was, the questioner said thank you too, so
Okay.
great. So it looks like a lot of people are just wondering if the course is going to address, different age groups. So I'm the grandmother of with adult children who have children also going through some anxiety issues. So the course will again address our own anxiety and how to deal with that, and helping our children or grandchildren through that.
It's interesting. I think we're all the same in this, no matter what age we are. So even, let's say I'm a grandmother, okay? So I'm a grandmother. My friends are getting ill. Some of them are passing away. My husband's well now, but what's going to happen? What's going to come in the next couple of decades for me? I'm the grandmother, okay? Let's say, these things are on the grandmother's mind, never mind her children and her grandchildren and their great-grandchildren, whatever it is. Like, we have anxiety as long as we're alive. And so I'm going to touch on the examples that all of us have at every age, because I don't feel that we can help other people until we have actually been successful with ourselves. So you can't get somebody else to calm down if you don't know what it's really like to move from a high pitch down to a center of calmness, peace, and tranquility. If you haven't done it yourself, you're going to be useless with your little encouragement, advice, and reassurance. You want to dole out to people. Like, that's not it. Okay, we have to know how to get ourselves to a good place. And certainly because the course is interactive, and the more people share and even just write in anonymously what their own anxieties are, we'll draw on all of those, because the more examples, the better. I mean, I can draw on my own, anxieties and put them in, and the ones I hear every day in my office, but I'm hoping that we will address yours. When you're signing up for the course, please, let me hear, and we'll address yours, and then take that down to the other ones. Yes, there will be examples of young children's anxiety, school-age children, adolescents, people in their 20s and 30s, mothers, or whatever, fathers in their middle age, and the elderly set too. When does it stop? Not while we're alive. Okay, so we'll use examples from every period.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
We are going to continue answering as many questions as we can live on the line right now. So I urge you to please keep putting your questions in if you can. And as I mentioned, and Sarah Chana just mentioned, we will also be over the next 6 weeks answering your questions on a weekly basis throughout the course. Again, if you can't make it to the live course and you're going to be able to listen to those recorded sessions, you're more than welcome to email questions in ahead of time to Jewish Workshops, and we'll make sure that Sarah Chana can see those questions so that she can address that during the class, and you'll be able to then hear the answers during the session that you're able to listen to. Welcome, MN. Great to have you. That is so wonderful. Welcome, Yael, as well, and welcome, Shira. Great to have all of you here. I would love to continue to welcome more people, so just come on back. It looks like these seats are really filling up quickly, and you're taking advantage of that additional attendee discount. So I'm very happy to see that. Excellent. Welcome, Miriam. Great to have you too. Okay, I will get to some of these questions before we close up in just a little bit. Um, how do I help a child process fear and anxiety that's happened from past events in his life?
It depends, what we're talking about, right? So if it's there are traumatic events that you're not going to be able to help your child process all by yourself, although you can be part of that solution. But if something really bad has happened to the child, there's been um, a frightening, like let's say a child witnessed, he was part of a terrorist attack or something, heaven forbid, right? And saw, carnage around him or whatever it is, and the child survived that and is now having flashbacks and nightmares and stuff. Please don't take that on. Like that's not for the layperson to try and help a child with, although there are certain things that that you should know about even when a child has dealt with trauma. We will touch on that in the course as well, about what the parent can do. But let's talk about just bad experiences. Like, let's think of a bad experience that child might have had. I used the one being bitten by a dog, but I don't want to use that again because we talked a lot about dogs. Let's say the child was rejected from a social circle, or let's say the child was dating and was interested in marrying 3 people in a row, and these 3 people rejected your child, and now she's become gun shy. She just doesn't want to date anymore. She doesn't know what to do with herself. She feels inadequate, and so on. Let's just say that that's the situation. Um, Now, parents in general, including myself very often, talk too much. Even though even I know all this stuff, when my anxiety is triggered, I'm also human. If I feel like very concerned for a child and the pain that the child has gone through, I start like falling to pieces. Although I might recuperate faster. Than I would have had I not had any techniques or any training or any knowledge or any experience, which I hope to share with you. So I might get over it, much faster, and then regroup and do the right thing. But what I mean by the wrong thing and what I mean by talking is that we jump in with a lot of reassurance. Don't worry, honey, it can always be different. We want to give advice. We want to help that child move on. One thing we need to know about anxiety is that it is a defense mechanism in the body that makes us rather inflexible and rigid and hypervigilant. And the result of that is that we are not quick to change anything when we have anxious feelings. So we don't just cheer up when somebody tells us the good news that, oh, things could be different next time. So this kid who's now doesn't want to date anymore and is afraid to go out and doesn't want to say the wrong thing and has become like tied up in a million knots. When you just start giving advice, that's not going to work because advice doesn't work. But also, if you think there's anything you can do particularly quickly, you're going to be wrong about that. With anxiety, it's always slowly, because anxiety is like a frightened animal. You can't scream at it to relax. You can't force it to relax. You can't intellectualize with it to relax. You can't rush it in any which way to relax. You always have to go very slowly with somebody who has already developed anxious feelings about something, like they might have about a past negative event or events. So we have to be prepared, first of all, to encounter it over and over again. We have to slow down and know that this is not going away fast. That's the first thing. We have to teach the anxiety itself that it's now safe. And there are many steps to that, again, which we'll be exploring in the course. But it's only with safety that anxious feelings begin to recede. So, and the safety will begin as far as what you can do is by listening. We've already said we talk too much, right? So the child is going like, I don't want to date anymore. I'm just fed up. I'm not doing it anymore. And even though everything inside of us is going like, what? Like, you got to get out there. You got to get back on the horse. You got to try again. Whatever. Like, you got to, chill. You got to silence all that stuff and just name feelings for a while. Like, I know, like, you've been hurt and it's painful and it's hard now. You got to listen to those feelings, and we'll look at the techniques that will make us a little bit more successful at doing that, and putting our feelings aside and being patient and allowing the child to work through the bad feelings before we get onto the new track, that there are new possibilities. And one of the main things that we need to bring to the table there is our patience and understanding that anxiety does not move quickly. So I'll just say that for now, and hopefully you'll learn more in the course. Okay.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're going to go ahead and start wrapping up here in just a little bit. I do see some questions coming in, so let me just get to this one or two more here before we have to
Yeah.
go. There are a couple questions, so I'm going to try to put them together to see if we can answer it. How do you help get children to express their feelings or emotions when they're not communicative, whether it's a child who's too young to be able to communicate, or there is also a child with special needs who is unable to communicate, even at a little bit of an older age? Are there techniques and things that we can do to help with that? Is that something that will be addressed in the course as well? And
We will address it, but I'll just say that one of the first and easiest things that we'll be doing there is giving voice to the feelings that are normal in that situation. Just for example, in my book, The Fear Fix, actually, which deals a lot with anxious feelings, what's all about the anxious feelings, there's a section there where a child watches at the table. They have the grandparents and the parents and the families gathered, and the grandfather has a heart attack at the table. Okay, it's like, or whatever, he keels over. And of course, there's a, whole scene where they call the ambulance, the parents are rushing about, and everything's going on, and nobody's really paying too much attention to this kid who might be, let's say, 11 or 12 or whatever, or 7 or 8, doesn't matter, or 18 or whatever, right? But let's say it's a younger child who is a quiet 5-year-old who's just like at the back of the room watching all this, and who's not communicative. So later on, after the grandfather's settled in his hospital bed and things are going on, somebody needs to go to that child, as it says in the book, and start the conversation by naming feelings that would be appropriate for that situation. So, wow, that was really scary, wasn't it? Watching grandpa fall over right like at the table like that. And the kid might shrug her shoulders, not say anything, or just look at you, kind of dumb, and you just keep talking. So like, I was really scared, and it's a good thing we called the ambulance right away, but it was very confusing. I didn't know what was happening. I don't think any of us knew what was happening right then. And you're talking through the whole experience, right up until the point where you go like, and now we're waiting to see, and we're still feeling concerned. Like whatever, all of the feelings. Now, if you do that every time that this uncommunicative child is in a situation that would provoke anxiety, the child is learning the vocabulary, is learning that these feelings are normal. And one day will just pop out with her. It's like when you're talking to a toddler and all of a sudden they start speaking full sentences, they're listening and they're learning and they're taking it in, and you're giving it to them. And eventually it will, first of all, it's going in and it's helping the child to settle all of her distress. And then eventually she will be able to communicate it because you've done such a great job. Don't just accept that a child has no feelings in a situation that would give anybody feelings. Okay? Like everybody has feelings in a situation like that. Most of them overwhelmingly terrifying. Those are the normal feelings to have, and the confusion and panic and upset and worry. All of that would be normal. And so those are the feelings that we will mention in the situation in which they occur, even if the child has nothing to say and just looks at us without words. We'll keep saying it. Okay?
great, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome, SS. Welcome, Rena, and welcome. Where did you go?
Mm-hmm.
Well, welcome, Sivi. It is wonderful to have all of you. Oh, I'm sorry, Chaya, I missed you too. Welcome to all. I encourage you to continue to go. I'm going to go ahead and put that link right back up in your chat box before we end for the day. It's www.jewishworkshops.com/anxiety free. And I put that right back in there. You can actually just copy and paste it right into another browser for yourself. So you can go and make sure you secure your spot. Sarahana, before we end for the day, if you could just leave us all, we've got, thank God we had people from around the world come and join us today. We were so grateful that everyone spent their time with us. We've still got, several hundred people hanging in here. And it seems like some people may still be on the fence, not sure if this is what they need. But can you leave us with some words and help us decide?
Mm-hmm. I just feel that this is a very neglected part of parenting education. We're all about the behavior, which is important. But when we neglect the inner world, it's like we're leaving our child abandoned really throughout life, because at every stage there are uncertainties and worries. And some children are genetically more vulnerable to like falling into the pit than others. But our so-called non-anxious child, a lot of people say, well, my child isn't anxious. Well, if is your child human? You know what I mean? Like your child may not have an anxiety disorder, but your child definitely has these feelings. You're not hearing all about them because we explained why in this past couple of hours. And just as part of being uh, fulfilling your task as a parent. I think it's like close to teaching a child how to swim. Like, how can you sort of not teach a child how to swim? The child's going to encounter bodies of water. You want that child to be prepared for life. By having tools. You don't know what's going to happen to your child ahead in adulthood. You don't know when your child's going to need to call upon these tools. You don't know when your child's going to fall into a deep pit. Of course, we want our children to have the simplest, least complicated lives possible, and then there they are, hit by divorce, poverty, illness of their own children, the real difficulties and challenges. I don't want to go over the long list of horrible things that can happen to us, but as a parent, the more tools you give your child to survive, the better your child will do. The less suffering your child will have. Isn't that one of the greatest gifts that we can give our children? I just think we have to try. We can't save them from suffering completely, but we can certainly help them along the way. It is a wonderful and priceless gift to give your children.
Thank you so much. We had someone write in, thank you for the opportunity to discuss these matters and share our questions and experiences with you and others in this webinar. With much appreciation, S&M from Helsinki.
Okay.
So thank you.
My
Thank you,
pleasure. My
Sarah
pleasure.
Khana, for being here. We have so many people now writing in. Thank you. Thank you so much. It meant the world to me to be able to be here with you today, Sarah Khana. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who joined us. We really appreciate you coming in and spending your time with us today. I am going to go ahead and leave the webinar open for just another couple minutes. You won't hear any talking, but I'll go ahead and leave it open so you can still put your name and telephone number in if you have any additional questions, need help registering, or we're having some technical difficulties. We're still here for you. Once the webinar is closed, I won't be able to get that information. So I will keep it open here for just a couple minutes and look forward to joining everyone next Thursday, January 11th. Thank you so much, Sarah Khana. It was a pleasure seeing you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I look forward to seeing you all there. Okay. Have a good week.
Thank you. Have a good one.